Queen PR, Krista B, those wrestling girls, TWG, Black Excellence, making it effortless. Podcast bringing up women in wrestling. Let's go.
What's up, everybody? It's your girl, Krista B, one half of those wrestling girls, and we are continuing our Men in Wrestling series. Queen PR will be joining us shortly, but I just had to start. Because I'm just so excited about the guest that we have here. And a lot of you may know him, a lot of you may not know him, but if you don't know him, we're gonna pull you from under that rock today. So please help me welcome Andreas Hale. Andreas, how are you feeling today?
I'm good. I appreciate you having me on.
Of course, I appreciate you for saying yes.
That was never an issue. I was gonna say yes.
I mean, we got busy schedules, like the things that we had to push aside for us to like be here today. So I'm just so glad you was able to work with us and we was able to work with you to actually have this going on, because I feel like it's very important for those people who don't know you, get to know you, and for those who do know you, get to know a little bit more of you. So, of course, in true journalism, wrestling fanatic fashion, Queen PR is here. She's coming up soon. We did some research. We did some digging. Of course, we had to. So hi.
There she is. What's up?
Hey, P.
Sorry, I'm like right on time.
You're literally right on time. Right on time. So I was just explaining to him that we are thankful for him joining us today for our Men in Wrestling series, and how we was just about to get into how he got started in this world of wrestling, because I see your background. You've been doing this for a long time. So how did you, not even just in wrestling, but how did you get started in the world of entertainment journalism?
Oh God.
Yeah.
All right. So it's a weird story. So we'll talk about wrestling in a minute, but I've been a pro wrestling fan like literally my whole life. Like it's the first thing I knew as a kid, and it's always been with me. But after I graduated high school, I went to Morehouse.
Okay.
And I went to Morehouse and I didn't know what the hell I was going to do. Right. It was one of those kids that was just like, yo, I'm going because like I always wanted to go to a HBCU, and I loved Morehouse, partially because of Boys in the Hood, partially because of Outkast. Weird story, but I needed to go to Atlanta. But I got there and I was like, I don't know what I want to do. So I, just like a lot of kids who don't know their way, they get into business management. I was like, I want to manage a business. I didn't want to manage a business. I didn't know what I was doing. Long story that I won't tell here, but I didn't finish at Morehouse, and I had to leave and I had to come home.
Okay.
But I've always loved music and hip hop, but I didn't go to school for journalism. There was a store out here called Hip Hop Site in Vegas. They used to frequent all the time. I used to buy all my music from there, and they had a website and they did reviews. They did Eminem's first website. Like they did a lot in the underground hip hop community. And I went to the store every week. New release Tuesdays. As I'm aging myself now. New release Tuesdays was like
okay.
Good times.
Yeah, good times. Like we're all here, so it's okay.
So I would go in there on Tuesdays to pick up my CDs, and one of the owners came out and he was asking, because I guess a writer was late on their deadline, if they could write a review for this album. And I was like, yo, I could do it. And he was like, who are you? And I was like, oh, I'm Andreas. Like, just give me a shot, right? They was like, have you written anything before? I was like, nah, no, I haven't. All right, we'll give you a shot. So I wrote one review, and it was like, can you do another one? I was like, yeah. I did another one. Can you do another one? Yeah, I did another one. I was like, hey, we need an assistant editor. Can you do that? You know, I didn't go to school for English, but I'll give it a shot. That worked out. Then there was a site called HipHopDX that launched, and they needed an editor. And I had a friend over there, and they was like, hey, it's like, we know Andreas, you know, it was still like fresh out for being a college project. Like that's how long ago it was. And they couldn't find an editor at the time. And I was like, yo, I could do that. I got a chance there. And when I first started there, if you know, like websites, it was like 10,000 uniques a month. And when I left, it was 1 million. I was the editor in chief there. So, and then from HipHopDX, I wrote for like The Source and Double XL and all those places. Then I got a gig at BET. I was an executive editor there. Worst job I've ever had in my life, by the way. It's awful.
That's sad to hear.
I mean, yeah, it's not surprising.
No, it's not.
It's not surprising.
It's not. But I worked at BET for a year, And yeah, I went there. Like you'll just have to Google it because I ain't doing the whole story here. I was
Mhm.
in page 6. It was bad,
Right.
right? Like when I left there. But I departed there and I got into Jay-Z hired me to do Life and Time. So I ran his website and did like YouTube channels and produced documentaries like TDE, Kendrick Lamar, fighters, and things of that nature. So my road to journalism was just like dumb unconventional. Like I when people say I fell into it, I literally fell into it. I didn't go to school for this. It was never my plan. It just happened to work out that way because I love music.
You know what's interesting about that is now it's like you can't imagine doing anything else.
No.
Like it's like I fell into it, and this is exactly like where I was meant to be. And me and Krista talk about how we started our brand all the time, and it really is just one of those things that happens like fate, and it's something that you love.
Yeah, I mean, look, man, my thing about like music journalism was I always felt like there was like the people that were writing reviews for like the source, I didn't agree with their opinions and I didn't think they articulated them well sometimes. And I always wanted to cover like underground artists like Little Brother or like Talib Kweli and Mos Def when Black Star was a thing, when like Common wasn't getting the love that he was supposed to be getting. So I wanted to offer a different perspective on hip hop. And it just turned out like before social media, you couldn't find your tribe. You always felt like you were alone in your opinions. And we'll talk
That's
about
true.
social media because like pro wrestling's been a boon to, with Black Twitter, we found our tribe, right?
Yeah.
Like because we needed that. But back then, you didn't know who rocked with you and your opinions. So it's like I wanted to quote the great CM Punk, I wanted to be a voice for the voiceless, right? Like I wanted to be able to write reviews or add perspectives that other people that I knew had, but nobody was really writing in big cities like New York. I was in Vegas. I was a Vegas kid who loved East Coast hip hop and like underground hip hop. And it just turned out these things worked out and I made a career out of it. And I've been fortunate, but it's everybody's path is different, right? And then I can't see myself doing anything else. Like I literally love writing and love presenting thoughts and opinions and making people think about the things that they see and think.
Yeah.
We love that too, and I think that's how when you mentioned Black Twitter and wrestling, and I feel like that's how all of us are, all like us, those wrestling girls. You, the Ringer podcast, Black Wrestling podcast, Jobber Tears podcast. Like everybody brings their own different perspective to this world that we call wrestling, and it's so fun to see everybody's creative side, even from like a social media standpoint. Like, we've mentioned this before. Like after Mania, P and I kind of had her switching roles, and her social media creativity is like top tier. Like I can never. I would literally put something cute behind something cute, put some script words on it, and call it a design. But P literally like takes the time and whatever she thinks she's going to put it on paper, and it's just so cool to see her creativity come to life through this world of wrestling. So you said earlier you were a lifelong wrestling fan, just like P and I are. How did you get into writing about wrestling?
Oh man. So yeah, man, like literally, like wrestling was like the first thing that I love. Like everybody has a first thing. I remember like when I was a kid, like my grandmother, who was like an old semi-racist white woman, like used to take me to old WWF shows. And it was the first thing I remember. So I always loved it. Coming from like music journalism, there came a breaking point. It was like the BET time where I was like, I don't really want to do this anymore. Like, I don't want to be the old man in the club. Like, I don't want to be that, like I remember they asked me like, some outlet asked me to like interview Soldier Boy at a nightclub. And I was like, I'm good. I think I've reached my ceiling here. Like, and granted, you can still write about music, but I was like, I want to do what I want to do.
Right.
And I pivoted like to combat sports where I cover boxing and MMA and pro wrestling. And my thing was, I always wanted to offer a Black perspective on these things because it was always like some old white dude telling me what to like. And I was like, I don't agree with you. Like,
Right.
I just don't agree with the things that you like. I don't agree with what you see. I don't agree with what you like. I don't agree with how you tell our stories. So I always wanted to story tell from a Black perspective in like pro wrestling, because especially in pro wrestling, we were always stereotyped, right? Like we were never the baby face. We were never the hero. We were always the evil villain. We were either there to entertain or to shuck and jive or to be the ally to some white dude. And I was like, I don't really like that. So I started like at HipHopDX. I told our owner, I was like, yo, we're covering WrestleMania. It was the year that Flair retired, Shawn Michaels Flair.
So
And he was like,
2008.
yeah, he was like, nah, nobody's going to click that. I was like, bro, listen, like, people are gonna do that. Like, we need to have a presence in pro wrestling, and we did it, and it did like great numbers for us. And from that point on, I was like, all right, cool. There's an audience for this. I wrote for MTV when CM Punk dropped the pipe bomb, and that became like big news. And they asked me to like go to SummerSlam when he returned to face Cena in the rematch. So it was like from that point on, like I covered professional wrestling opinions and interviews and things of that nature because I just love it so much. And I feel like a lot of stories don't get told properly from our perspective in pro wrestling because there's so many people that look like us and they're more diverse than people could imagine, but they don't have people like us to talk to them.
Right.
It's that.
Can I speak to something that you mentioned about, like, I guess your editor or someone who was like assumed that a wrestling story wouldn't do numbers? Because I feel like that is like one of my pet peeves, because when you think about just like the reach that wrestling has, or just like the social media numbers and how they have more subscribers combined on social, they literally are number one social trending topic every live show every week. But then you still have people being like, oh, nobody cares about that. Oh, people still watch that. And it's just like, do you understand how strong that wrestling fan dollar is, the level of dedication that is there, and once you hook them, that loyalty is there? Like, and it's still mind-blowing to me that in 2023, with like two major wrestling promotions on network television, where I'm still getting questioned on whether or not people still watch wrestling, or do people care about this. And one thing I do appreciate is when it's like a shock. I was in LA and we were talking to an Uber driver, and he was saying how he went to like he lived in like one random town, and he was just like, yeah, like I totally underestimated the traffic. You know, I didn't think anybody would come to WrestleMania. And I was like, it's at SoFi. How could you think nobody was going to come? It was like, yeah, I totally underestimated the traffic. Like, people still care about this shit. And I'm like, what? So like, how did you, I'm sure you still even deal with that, because we're women that say we love wrestling, and we get that reaction. Like, how do you navigate that, you know, assumption that nobody cares about it or won't do numbers, and like, how do you kind of advocate for it?
First and foremost, the fact that you are two black women who love pro wrestling, boy, when I tell you, you guys were the outlier once upon a time, they'd be like, what? Black women don't like pro wrestling? Man, like I said, we found our tribe. It's like, I love what y'all do, and I appreciate what y'all do, and I appreciate the perspective that y'all have. So that's very important. For me, it's like I stand on it, right? Like, I love pro wrestling, and I don't care, and I never cared, right? Like, when I was a kid, yo, the homies would come over. I'm like, yo, we watching pay-per-views, right? Like, bruh, I had my black box. They was like, you watching wrestling again? Yes. And then I would explain it to them, and I convert a few, but like the drama behind it, and you know, The Rock or Austin or whoever it was. But as I've gotten, when I started pitching stories to like other outlets that would say, "Oh, we really don't cover this," and I asked the simple questions like, "Yo, who's the most highest paid actor in the world right now?" The Rock. Oh, it's not gonna click. Is that what you're telling me?
I'm gonna add that to my list of defenses.
Right, exactly.
I don't even think about that.
Like, for the notes, right?
Like, legitimately, like name another entertainment industry, right, that is present at every sports championship. Pro wrestling. The belt is everywhere. No matter what, as kids, people say you don't watch it anymore. Like, some people like, you still watch it? Yeah, and so there's like several million people, right? Like, what's wrong with y'all? And then if there's anybody that can really, when it comes to like doing good interviews, like this is what they do. They cut promos for a living. Right? So it's like, yo, if we get them on a camera, yeah, they're gonna cook. Right? They're going to do well for us. They're going to tell great stories. People that don't understand the industry and still don't, you have to show them the way. But you like, when people will say, you know, that stuff is fake, right? It's like, yeah, let's get past that because it's not fake, right?
It's like real in so many other ways.
Right. I was like, what do you watch? I mean, we've had this conversation. What do you watch? Right. You watch Marvel? Oh, yeah, that's real. But it did gangbusters at the box office, right? Because you're entertained, right? You're entertained. To me, it's a violent ballet. I've told people this. I was like, it's a highly violent ballet where these things are so artful and beautiful and artistic, but it's so violent that even my pops, he used to ridicule me for watching pro wrestling. He had walked in. I was watching New Japan, the Golden Lovers versus the Young Bucks. And he was watching. He was like, you still watch this thing? And by like 15 minutes in, he was like, yo. He was like, they're taking bumps. They're breaking tables. Like, that's real, right? And I was like, hey, that's the allure of it. you have to get somebody hooked and understand the beauty and athleticism that's within pro wrestling and everything that's not just the act that's in the ring and who they are outside of the ring to get them hooked. And they'll come around. Everybody comes around.
That's actually true because when I actually started to get back in wrestling, my friend, I'll be like, hey, I think I was like, watch the turn to SmackDown. This is happening right now. And she'd be like, Krista, I haven't watched wrestling in years. I said, yeah, okay, turn to SmackDown. Let's go. So we're on the phone and I'm explaining to her who's happening, what's happening. I think like this is like Shield height of the Shield. And then every week it was just like, did you just see what happened? Oh my God, why was Seth Rollins turn on Roman and Dean? So it was like you said, you draw them in, you bring that conversation up and you have them so enthralled in it that you just want to have those conversations. You just want to be like, okay, so remember back then we was over here promoting a lot of stuff that we should not have been promoting. They don't do that anymore because it would not fly in this day and age.
I had a friend that was staying with me for like 3 months, and they were like hooked on the Bloodline storyline because they just had, because they would just be there like on their phone while, you know, me and Letty gonna watch Raw and SmackDown. If you at our house on a Monday, Friday night, this is what we watching.
Now Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday as well.
And it was just so welcoming because then like randomly one day he was just like, yo, why that white boy thought he could be down? So me and Letty's like, what? He was like, Sammy, he really thought he could be down and then gonna be mad. And like for me, like my heart exploded because I didn't even think he cared or paid any attention. And he was like, yeah, I've been paying attention. So then WWE had just dropped the YouTube playlist, and I was like, yo, when you bored at work, watch this. He came to the house the next day and was like, yo, there's levels to this. I'm like, and that just shows it's like the purest form of entertainment. Like he literally would just watch it, you know, in the background, but the storytelling, he's like, wait. He's thinking about this. So I love moments like that.
Absolutely. So we officially met face to face in LA this year. In Cali. And although I feel like Cali was literally like my worst experience ever, because it was so cold. Not anything else. Just because the weather-wise. You put together this amazing panel full of women who love wrestling. You had wrestlers on there or former wrestlers on there. What gave you the idea to do something like that during WrestleMania weekend? It's already a crazy and hectic weekend as is. So what was the idea to be like, I want to do this during this weekend?
All right, so I'll give you the semi-long answer. So, remember StarCast? When they did StarCast. So I had met Conrad Thompson at backstage at the Royal Rumble. And I had talked to him about StarCast. And I was like, hey, StarCast is a great idea. But I was like, you know what the problem is? I said, you ain't had no black people up there. Right? And he was like, I didn't even think about it because there's this thing called blind spot. Some people aren't necessarily racist. Some people
absolutely, especially in an industry that is literally dominated by white men.
Right. So instead of meeting it with anger, I was like, hey, listen, I think, you know, it would behoove you to offer a different perspective. So I pitched him a thing called Wrestling with Stereotypes. It was a panel for StarCast. And it was, I want to say the first Double or Nothing. He was like, okay, you'll get a stage at this. So like Sean Waltman and a bunch of people was like, yo, this is amazing. We never had like a black panel at anything. And Kevin Nash, a bunch of them promoted it. Did really well. The second time we did it, we did a panel. We had like Nyla Rose, Scorpio Sky, Mega Ran was there. And it ended up being the main event for StarCast. Moxley had the staph infection. And they called me, it was like, yo, can you headline because you're going to fill up a room with all these people that want to hear these stories. And right there, I realized like, yo, people want to hear the things that we experience in this industry as fans, as talent. Like they want to hear these stories because it ain't sweet being a minority in this business, especially again, for y'all being black women is crazy. Right. I'm just a black man and I only go through half of the things that y'all deal with. But there's so many stories like Nyla Rose told her story. Like it was just so many people that were telling their different stories and it went over so well. We were supposed to do it again at WrestleMania, but the pandemic happened. We were supposed to do Wrestling with Stereotypes in Tampa in partnership with GCW and the pandemic happened. So it shut down for a few years. And I always thought there were two things that I always thought about. Like I wanted to do more panels and more things like cultured events at WrestleMania, and I always wanted to do like a Rock Nation brunch at WrestleMania because I feel like now
Please,
Love
there's
it.
let's
there's
manifest
so
that.
it's gonna happen.
I
It's
need a
gonna
rock.
happen.
I need to be in some
That's
Getty
like a dream come true.
and some something cute.
Yeah.
Sitting next to behind Jay-Z, like something.
So for this, I would, Kaz was doing Wale Mania, and we were talking, and obviously those who went to Wale Mania know that I put together the Big E tribute, right? That we did there. And in doing that, I talked to Tavia Hartley at WWE, and I talked to a few other people, and I was like, yo, I wanna kick the tires to see if people will come out if I do like a small panel, and we'll get like a liquor sponsor and do something real small and tight. I just want to see how the turnout is. And I was like, yo, I want to do a panel, but I want to be on women in this business because y'all definitely don't get to tell y'all story, especially as fans too, and the shit that y'all run into. So that was like the genesis behind it. And I invited a small group of people. I thought we had a pretty good turnout. And now people want more. So the super kickback is what it was called. And now it's like for Philly, we're definitely going to make it bigger. But I wanted to have something where we could get together as a community, support each other, not fight and bicker like we do on social media because it's a little bit too much of that. Show some unity and just hang out and have a good time. And the thing that's most important, ain't nobody wrestling because there's more than enough wrestling during WrestleMania weekend. Let's just kick it.
I remember meeting you at the end of that and just being like, thank you for that, and you were like, yeah, we need I think you said something to the effect of like, yeah, we need something during WrestleMania weekend to like think. And I was like, you're right. Like, WrestleMania week, there's so much going on. There's 1,000,001 wrestling shows. There was a fucking one in the backyard of the venue we were in at the Super Kickback. But you were like, we need something to come together and like think and talk and have these sort of conversations. And I was just like, yo, that it was so welcome, Krista. And I'm sure you agree, having done 3 WrestleMania weekends now, like it was very refreshing to have that on the docket because you have 1,000,001 things to do once you get to whatever city, but to know that there was a panel like hosted by you and shout out to everyone that was a part of it, it was very welcome. And I met a lot of people there that we like, that's where we met Rest Things. We met there and giving the women their flowers, and it was a beautiful event.
It was definitely a beautiful event.
And the beauty about it is like WrestleMania is so chaotic, right? Like we're all running because either we're running to different shows or if you're media, you're running to do interviews. We don't get a chance to actually meet each other. I don't want people to meet in passing, right? I don't want like Cam Hawkins. Like I love Cam, and I was like, "Yo, I need you to show up because I need to meet you because you're doing really good work, right?" And I just wanted people to be able to sit back, have a drink, and be like, "Yo, I appreciate you," or celebrating each other because we don't get to do that enough, and we're never in the same spot for longer than 5 minutes. So this is something that we're going to make an annual thing, and I'm glad that y'all came out. I appreciate y'all being out there, but it's something that I want to build upon because we just need those moments to breathe. Because I see enough fools getting slammed on their head that weekend. It's a lot.
Right. It's like
a lot, and it's very overwhelming sometimes. And it's just like, you're there for fun, you're there for work, but you also want to have fun and actually, like you said, meet and see and talk to people. I feel like the only time you really get to meet and see and talk to people is Wale Mania. If you're like, and depending on where you at, backstage, VIP, in the crowd, that's like really the only time you get to see. And then you have to crunch in sightseeing if you've never been to a place before. You have to crunch in being at your media spots and interviews real quick. Then you have to crunch in, get into stadiums and stuff on time. And
then depending on the city, like how easy is it to get around? Like, like all that kind of stuff.
I'm just so glad next year's in Philly because that's the block.
Thank you, Jesus. I'm gonna need it to be East Coast for a couple
more often,
few years, But I want to talk about Wale Mania because you come from like a hip hop journalist background. I think I told you in Cali, like Letty is a huge fan. She collected hip hop magazines growing up. And when I told her that I was like hanging out with you, like she was like, "What?" So it was just like, that connection. And the fact that you're like a wrestling fan as well, and BRP using the Source cover inspiration. Like I love those like mixed, things. And then Wale Mania is one of those things where hip hop meets wrestling, and like being backstage with Elliot Wilson at Wale Mania, like just the intersections of that and how diverse the crowd. Wale Mania is where every promotion can hang out with their friends and chill, you know. The Rock's daughter was there. I hate what's her name? I don't want to call her
Ava
last name.
Rain,
Ava
aka
Rain.
Simone.
Yes. Simone
Yeah.
Johnson was like hanging out, like, you know, having a good time. And I was just like, this is so cool. There's nothing else that's doing that in the wrestling community, but it also has that like hip hop feel. Like, how did it feel for you to, I don't know how many Wale Manias you've come to, but like, how do you in general just feel that we're able to have this tradition?
Oh man, listen, like, so I've known Kaz for years. Kaz and Amelia I've known for years. And I remember back when I was at leaving BET and Kaz was at the source, like that's how we connected, was through pro wrestling. It was like that community. It was like, yo, you like pro wrestling? I was like, yeah, you like pro wrestling? And then we all became tight because of that. And it was the wrestle rap era. Like that's where we all got
Oh
together
wow, I
originally.
remember that.
So I was in San Fran and Kaz had texted me. He's like, yo, I'm thinking about this idea. Cause that's how I kind of met Wale through pro wrestling. I was like, yo, I like your music, but you like wrestling. We're friends now, right? Because there ain't too many like us. So Kaz had mentioned in San Fran, WrestleMania 31, Rollins cashing in, that they were doing the first Wale Mania. And I happened to be dumb, so I stayed in like Simi Valley or something, so I couldn't get all the way down there. But I heard how great it was, so I ended up going to the one for Kofi Mania 2019, which was
I knew
absolutely
nothing about. I
oof.
promise you.
Until the next day, I was like, wait, what is happening?
That was my first WrestleMania
Samoa
ever.
Joe was freestyling somewhere.
Right.
I was there
I knew
in New
nothing
York.
about
What's
the
happening?
parties or anything. The only party we knew about was Jabba Tears viewing party. That's the only one we knew about. Like, we knew nothing about Wale Mania. We knew nothing about all of the other things. Like, I was just happy that my job was able to give me spare tickets to go. And that was it. I knew nothing about Wale Mania, but when we found out, we made sure we was not missing it ever since.
Yeah. See, so that one, obviously, you have the intersection of Kofi getting his title opportunity, and you got the Wale Mania. So it was like to see all these people living as their human selves and not as their wrestling selves, especially Black people as a community. It was like we realized, like, yo, there's really something here and it's special, and everybody's comfortable, and nobody's like having promotional wars. Like, you know, I'm backstage with E and Hobbs, and they take a picture and it goes viral, and people are like, they can't do that. Yes, they can, because they're friends. They boys. Like, what are you talking about, right? There's no tribalism. There's none of that. Everybody just hangs out. Especially as Black people, we got to be close to each other. And our allies as well. Like my good friend Tom Hannafin took a very great picture at Wale Mania where he's like, yo, I'm here. And it's like, but that's our community, right? Like that's our community. And you see Smoke Dizza and West Side Gun, and it's like it's the one place we can all go. Again, it's not wrestling. There's nobody getting slammed on their head, but at the same time, it's like, yo, we kicking it. Like there's a DJ. We're listening to some good music. Yes, it's the ultimate.
It's the ultimate
beautiful.
Kickback is like a family reunion. That's what we call it.
Oh, 1,000%.
Like Black wrestling, Jabba Tears, Stephanie Hardy, who this was her first one this year. Lovely. Like, it's literally like
family.
A family kickback, a family barbecue. So I wanted to ask you, because you're into hip hop, you're into wrestling, and this year makes 50 years of hip hop.
Yeah.
So for some reason, I just feel like hip hop has played such a major part in wrestling, as P said, like Little Kim doing Trish Stratus's theme song, or Salt and Pepper performing at one of the pay-per-views back then. I think it was Royal Rumble or WrestleMania, and they was about to fight Bam Bam Bigelow. Like, it's just like, how do you think that WWE, because even not just WWE, like AEW as well, like, how do you think they can contribute to the anniversary coming up in August to hip hop? Because they're so heavily influenced.
It's a good question, man. I mean, just identifying, like, listen, man, there's so many pro wrestling fans that are in the hip hop community that would love. I always get calls from like certain rappers for years, and more of them start to show up, but they was like, yo, how do you go to these things? Like, how do I get tickets? If you create more synergy in these communities, they'll turn out for you. Yeah. And there's ways to celebrate them as well. Like, when the Usos battled, had the battle with the New Day, the rap battle, and Wale's there. It's like
Wale was being messy. Just saying.
He was like, but doing more events like that, right? Because wrestling and hip hop is so closely intertwined, right? Like a battle rap is like cutting a promo. It's like very much the same thing. And I always say everything is pro wrestling, but everything is hip hop too. So it's just identifying these audiences and these fans and these hip hop heads that wrestle. Like, you know, I talk about Biggie all the time. It's like my brother, and he's a hip hop head. Like like that's all we talk about is rap music. But there's so many others in this business that love it. So if there's more ways to create more synergy and not just having like Rick Ross or I'm not using him as like an example because it wasn't arbitrary, because him and Swerve are actually pretty cool, but to not have rappers there arbitrarily, having rappers who actually care about the culture, show up to events, identifying and celebrating them. I've said this a million times. I don't like when Westside Gunn is paying to go to all these shows and nobody's recognizing Westside Gunn being a pro wrestling fan. Like, you got to recognize that man because he's doing the work.
He's doing the work. Absolutely. I'll always point him out first. You can ask me. I'm like, that's Westside Gunn. You can't miss him.
And he was so nice.
And he remembers us. He remembers us from last year, Texas last year. I ran into him at an event. He was like, "Oh yeah, you get those part of those wrestling girls. Let's do something. Let's work on something." So him again this year, Mania. So it's like for him to be at every AEW show, every WWE show, big chains and all that, and y'all don't even give him a quick shot promo like, "Oh, rapper Westside Gunn is here." It's disheartening sometimes because he's literally there showing that he is a fan.
Yeah, he's not there. He's not there arbitrarily. It wasn't like they gave him tickets. It was like, oh, this would be fun. He's there all the time. I just saw him all the time. Me, him, and Shaheem Reed, who Shaheem hadn't been to an AEW event, and I made sure to get tickets for him. You know, Shaheem works with Busta, and Busta's album get ready to come out. We all there taking a picture, and it's just like, yo, you got to acknowledge these people that are supporting your business, because I get it. Sometimes y'all got blind spots. Y'all want to recognize like Mark Wahlberg's there, some shit like that. But there are hip hop dudes that love pro wrestling.
I feel like one of the only hip hop dudes, and this is just from me, my perspective, that I've seen other than Wale get recognized is Fabulous. I've seen Fabulous. Like,
I remember that.
I've seen Fabulous be there with his sons, be there by himself. I actually me and Fabulous grew up in the same projects or whatever. He's older than me, but he grew up with my brother. But it's just like to know that somebody that I've seen growing up, breaking into the business, loving wrestling, when we're at the same show. When we could have been having a conversation like that when we were like growing up, and me and my friends was watching wrestling. It just needs a balance. It needs a balance. That's what I was going to say. It just needs to be balanced.
I agree. And I love that. I think you mentioned it, like how it's a secret language or like a secret society being a wrestling fan, because I approached Wale backstage more easily because I could talk to him about wrestling. Like if I met him in any other circumstance or any other like celebrity or rapper, like I wouldn't be as quick to just like walk up to them. But because it's like we can literally speak the second language, like it's just like it's very comforting, especially because you grow up thinking you're the only one. And there's so many people. Like one of my friends always be like, "Oh, where were all of y'all when I was younger?" You know, where I could have talked to you guys about it. I just read Fat Joe's autobiography, and he makes several wrestling references. And I'm just like, "Oh, let me find out Fat Joe's a wrestling fan." It's like I would love to like see him, you know, at a show like with his family, and you know, every like that level of celebrity be there. Like even Cardi B. Like, wrestling fans are also the ones to blame, but every time she posts something about wrestling, she has to delete it because wrestling fans on Twitter are so dumb. But it's so cool to know, and everyone in the 90s, like if you're like a millennial, like you probably have loved wrestling at one point just because of the Attitude Era and WCW at that time. So I'm not surprised to hear that Cardi B grew up liking John Cena, Eddie Guerrero, and like all of that. But I like seeing that. It's just another, you know, community for everyone.
Yeah,
it is. And like when you say that secret language, it's like because we didn't have nobody to share that language with like 15 years ago, right? Like we sat in our own places and was like, damn, I ain't got no friends that watch pro wrestling. And now it's like not only are we finding each other, but I think both industries are recognizing, it's a capitalistic society, but there's money to be made because, bro, they buying tickets, they buying merchandise, they're showing up in droves, they're supporting these talents, right? Like, it's up to us to push them to promote and push those black superstars and those women that we love, because I always say, like, pro wrestling is like a reflection of society, and for a long time, it was through the view of an old white dude who loved Donald Trump. That was Vince McMahon. right? So like all the baby faces are people that Vince would have liked.
Exactly.
All the heels are the people that Vince wouldn't have fucked with. Like he saw black people was like yuck, right? Or like Asian people are always a joke to Vince McMahon, or like Mexicans riding lawnmowers, or like gay people being a joke. Like that shit ain't cool. But now that things are changing and you start to see how diverse the culture is of pro wrestling, now you got to be more comfortable as an organization to put a black face at the top of your brand, which makes us so proud when we see Bianca Belair being she's not just being at the top,
right?
She's representing us.
It gives me goosebumps talking about Bianca because she is not a caricature. No. She is not playing a black character. She is who she is. And she has always, like, we had the pleasure of interviewing her in 2020 during the Black Lives Matter protests and like all of that, like right before she kind of popped, and she couldn't talk about wrestling, which ended up being a blessing in disguise because we talked about everything else.
You got to know the real her,
code switching, resources, and like really what her like her purpose was, and she wanted to be her authentic self. She, she was going to push back on things that were too caricaturish, and she wanted to represent black women and be a hero to them. So, me and Krista watch her now, and I'm just like, this is a big deal.
It is.
And it will always be a big deal. Like when she has the marching band at WrestleMania and like the black girls dancing in Hollywood, like I literally was like fighting back tears watching that. And I was, and when I met her the first time, I said, I have to say thank you just for everything in the class and just how her and Montez, how they carry themselves. I was like, she is what we needed.
Yeah, absolutely. And not even just like the marching band and the little black girls. Even when she came out at Rumble with the herstory and the Macon cool outfit and the shirt and her standing being her unapologetic self, like it's just so refreshing to see that she's breaking that stereotype that typically follows us as black people, especially black females. Because when you look back at it, we didn't have a lot of black females, and then the one black female that we had, her name was Shaniqua. She had the whip and she was very dominating, and and then she just kind of went away. And then the other black female that we had Jacqueline, and she had to show off her body because Sable was showing off her body, and it was like you pitting them against each other. Then another
did not appreciate Jacqueline like I should have.
Yeah.
Back in the day,
but they didn't. That's how they made
justice for Jacqueline because she was bad.
But that's how they presented her to us. And then you have like more of the muscular ones, like Jazz and Awesome Kong. And Awesome Kong, she's being called Kong because of, we all know why.
We know why.
We know why. And then Jazz, she's not being properly represented. So you have Teddy Long and her now husband, I can't think of his name right now, being real mad and big and meaty and mean. And, they're WWE at the time was set in that stereotype, and it was very hard to break through that. And then we had women like Naomi come and break through that and make history twice. We had women like Alicia Fox come and stand her own. Now we have somebody like Bianca Belair who's literally like skyrocketing through and breaking multiple glass ceilings at one time. So I love like how we're able to see a representation in us on TV now, more so, not just in WWE.
Yeah, that's big facts. That's a big fact. I mean, shout out to also Jade Cargill.
Oh yes.
I mean, with the AKA interest of Double or Nothing. I was
love it. After that, kind of turned me off because of the blackface thing, but it was right after.
Blind spots, yo. Some people just don't see what they're doing when it's happening.
And I'm just like, why? Like, this was just so rich and authentic. And first of all, I didn't even know she was an AKA. I did not know she was a part of Divine Nine. And for her to represent and for her to like stand in solidarity with her sorors, and then no more than 30 minutes later, you kind of just wiped the taste out of everybody's mouths who appreciated that.
Yeah, they weren't paying attention that night. And I talk about Jade. I hosted a panel in Atlanta at Mercedes-Benz Stadium about African Americans in pro wrestling. It was Jade and Powerhouse Hobbs and Ricky Starks and Willow Nightingale, who I love. I think
Willow.
She's magic.
We love Willow.
She's incredible. And Stokely Hathaway, who's like fucking hilarious. he's ridiculous. But I got to host that panel, and it was a Black sports business symposium, right?
Mhm.
And there was all like Deion Sanders was there, like all these people were there, and I'm hosting a pro wrestling panel in front of Black people. And it ended up like it was a decent crowd. And then as we kept talking, more people kept showing up, kept showing up. Rich Paul was there. And we
Ooh.
met Rich Paul afterwards. And he was like, wow, that was an amazing panel. But it's like, again, people don't understand the power of pro wrestling in the Black community and how significant it is to see. Because one thing we ain't gonna do, we ain't gonna let our brothers and sisters that have worked in this business down. We just not. We're gonna push them to the moon. Bianca got all our support.
Period.
All of it. Jade too. Hobbs, E, the New Day. Shit. Like we love our folks.
We do. We love on them. And it's times where how you was talking about diversity and these blind spots. It's times where these blind spots become so disheartening to where it's like we don't want to provide our Black dollars to your company because you just don't care about how we feel. So I rather now put my Black dollars in independent companies and independent shows and see them because they're definitely prospering. They definitely understand where we're coming from because we are them and they are us.
Oh, absolutely.
Yep. No.
100%. Because I'll say this because this is another conversation that I've had. Like we see more Black wrestlers getting the spotlight, right? But we need more Black people behind the scenes. And what I mean by that is like we need Black people behind the scenes. I always say this at every place I've always worked with. You need one Black person that's in the room that hears an idea was like, that shit ain't gonna work.
Yeah.
Do not do that because it's offensive.
That one person to say.
I always say that. Even when we was talking about women's wrestling, like we always do. I can't remember which episode. And I remember saying vividly, there are no Black women writing for Black women in these writing rooms. There are barely any Black people writing for Black people. But when it comes down to the women, why do we have to have older white men writing for women and then Black women or women of color when you know nothing about what we go through, what we stand, how we speak? You know nothing. You just go off of what you were trained or what you the idea of what you.
And that's the disconnect where it's like on one end, is there more visibility? 1,000%. Now it's like that backstage now got to match that because then that's when we have that magic and we have someone like Bianca who's I think gonna be that touchstone to that next level because they're gonna be like, okay, we can do this, and she's herself.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I agree. I definitely agree. So, Andreas, what's next? Like, I know we was talking about a little bit about Philly and what prospects you want to have going on for that WrestleMania, but what's next right now? Like from we in June still, from July all the way until December.
There's a couple things that I can't talk about that's in the works, but one thing that I can talk about is this thing that's behind me. If anybody's seen on video, this Our Heroes Rock thing that me and Big E and Johnny Davenport, who a lot of people don't know, is a Black man who makes a lot of people's wrestling gear. He does the New Day's gear. He did all of Gargano's takeover gear. Johnny Davenport
gear is amazing.
Yeah,
but that's all Jonathan Davenport, and the three of us got together. The short version is George Floyd gets murdered, and I'm on the New Day podcast, with the guys.
I love
me and E, we've been friends for a long time, but we were like, yo, how do we make sure that these conversations don't end here, right? Like we can't, like Black situations, like the fact that the New Day got to have a podcast about George Floyd and I was on it was amazing in itself.
Yeah.
And it ended up being number one.
I cried that episode. Like it was so emotional.
It was
and
rough.
Also long live New Day Pod. It really made my weeks. Monday mornings, I loved it. But that episode, like, thank you for that commentary on that, first of all. And, I always say with the New Day, during that time, they kind of, and a lot of people probably could disagree with me, but it's almost like they had a responsibility to comment on it. Yeah. Because in the wrestling community, you are the most successful Black wrestlers. And the fact that they did speak on it, having them kneel in the ring, like, I was like, yo, I didn't think I could like the New Day more.
I think that part is what made me
like, it was just so, and I believe in my heart that if they got, and I don't know what happened backstage, but I feel like they would have fought back if they got pushed back wanting to do that. Like I just felt a sense of pride knowing that they probably fought. I don't know the circumstances, but the fact that they did it, like that's so important. And now, you know, hearing the inspiration of Our Heroes Rock, like, you know, I don't want these conversations to end here. Like that is so important. Like that's how we grow. That's how we elevate.
Absolutely. So I love the fact that you have Our Heroes Rock going on. Just tell us a little bit more about that. Then I want to kind of get your opinion on the Black Wrestling BRP 50 list.
That I think we've always kind of planned to do
Yeah.
is be able to do a spotlight episode on someone and then hopefully hear from them. So yeah, I think we should just introduce our guest of honor.
Right.
Jazz, let's do it.
He's here?
Let's do it. Yeah. Jazz is here.
Oh my gosh.
Hi.
Oh my gosh. This is I'm fangirling right now. I'm so sorry.
we get like do we get like just a minute just to fangirl real quick?
So tell us more about Our Heroes Rock, and then we want to get into we want to get your input on the Black Wrestling Podcast BRP 50 list.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Okay, so after they kneeled, which was something that I don't want to speak out of turn, but I knew they were going to do, and there was nobody was going to stop them. That was going to happen. Johnny made gear for E, and it had these Schoolhouse Rock inspired characters on it. E had sent it to me, and I was like, "Yo, what are you doing with this?" He was like, "Yo, I'm wearing it to the ring," and I was like, "Then what?" He was like, "I don't know." I was like, "No, they can't die right there. Like it can't just be some gear that like some people notice and some people don't." So me, E, and Johnny had a call. I was like, "Yo, it's got to be bigger than this." I was like, "How about a cartoon?" I was like, "What?" And I was like, "Let's make a cartoon." And I was like, "Yo, let's make like Schoolhouse Rock." Like we started snowballing with an idea, and I was like, from our music industry connects, I could call a few people, and I was like, let's make Schoolhouse Rock songs that like blend hip hop with like activism and blackness, and make it for the kids. We launched that Kickstarter, raised over $150,000. And we got a good friend of mine, Rhapsody, who's doing the first episode. My God, yo, it doesn't want to let me be great. There's some white folks out here trying to shut me down.
Remember when my painting would always fall? Because I have been kneeling painting for the and it kept falling every time I started talking about black wrestlers. I was like, yo, who don't want to see us be great?
They don't want to let me be great, so I'm gonna be great. Let's visit being great.
Period.
Yeah.
So we launched Kickstarter, raised a bunch of money. The first episode is actually finished finally, and we're entering film festivals this summer with the first episode of Our Heroes Rock. So it is black, it is ours. It's owned by 3 black men who love activism, hip hop, and pro wrestling, and that's what we're doing. And then people will see it very soon. But yeah, that's for me, E and Johnny, it's the most important thing we've ever done. I don't say that hyperbolic. I say that because we never thought we'd make a cartoon for kids about people in Black history that you should know, that a lot of people don't get taught about in school. And using hip hop as a vehicle to educate that's my bread and butter right there. So it's all of our worlds colliding, and hopefully people will get to enjoy it because it's coming very soon.
I love that so much. I hope that some of the movie festivals is in New York, because I would want to be there to see the premiere of this, because that just sounds so amazing. I feel like I just want to get my godkids and my nephews a copy of it and just, hey, we're watching this, sit down, this is what we're watching. So I love that, and thank you for following that dream and educating, because like you said, school systems, we weren't taught much. We had to learn on our own.
Yes.
No more of that at all. So I know you probably saw all the hoopla on social media last week and this week about Black Wrestling Podcast BRP 50 list. So when you first saw it, because that album, that album cover, hear me, sorry, that threefold spread, amazing. And they kind of corrected me when I was live with them yesterday. I said, yeah, y'all got inspired by that source cover with Death Row on it. And it was like, no. I said, what are you talking about? No. And I was like, it literally symbolizes like, y'all are older, y'all love hip hop and grew up in that era. So I'm thinking it was okay, one way to put it. But what did you initially think when you saw the spread by itself before you saw the list?
Okay, so for one, I wrote the lead article for that 2 years in a row now. Last year I wrote Bianca Belair being number one. This year I wrote The Rise of the Indies. But I didn't see the artwork until it was done. And when I saw it, I was like, the first time I was like, yo, like this is the fold out pages of the magazines. Yo, like I put that shit on my wall, cause like that's the shit I'm talking about.
I told them that.
They gotta sell that shit, yo.
I was like, we need posters because once I redo this, that has to be on the wall.
Yeah, I thought it was, I mean, it was everything that it needed to be. It was the hybrid of hip hop culture meeting pro wrestling and blackness all together. Like I thought it was so dope. And shout out to those guys. I tell them all the time. I was like, I love the work that y'all do. Like for real. Like the creativity behind it. My Nation of Domination sweater, I still rock that all the time.
Absolutely.
Like, they're creatives, man.
And Sasha sweater all the time.
They are creative. So it's like when I saw that artwork, I was like, yo, this is it. I don't even know if they know how big this is. Right. So I had to tell them, I was like, yo, you fucking did it with this one.
Oh no, they know. When I
seen it, it just gave me all the feels because I've been like in this whole nostalgic mode lately. And you know, watching the BET Awards the other night, and then seeing that because it just represents a time where it was just like, yo, if you wasn't there, like I feel bad for you because this was just like a time in music where you got your information from magazines and you got to know columnists and you know people that review the albums because that was your voice essentially where that you can get it. So that it kind of came at the perfect time. Like you said, they probably don't know how huge it is. I think it came at the perfect time in every way. And it was so dope. But how did it feel to know that? Because, you know, the PWI is a list and like everyone that makes lists and rankings are old white people in wrestling. How did it feel to see, and especially and this is shout out to Black Wrestling, the care, the detail that's put into this list. Like they're not just putting 50 Black wrestlers on the list. Like it's very intricate and they work really hard at it. How did it feel to like see that, like being along wrestling fan and you know doing everything you've done in media to see like a publication do something like that?
I mean, it's so dope because for one, it's like you're acknowledging the people that a lot of people know, like Bianca Belair, right? Of course, yeah. But then you acknowledge people like the Billy Dixons of the world, the Calvin Tankmans of the world, the people who don't. There's a lot of people who don't watch indie wrestling. As much as we love pro wrestling and watch it, we forget that some of this talent out there aren't seen. So now you're providing a guide for somebody to go, you know what? Let me go down the YouTube rabbit hole and find out who this. I'm gonna keep saying Billy Dixon or Darius Carter. Like, let me find out why they talk about Darius Carter. Like, why is he such an asshole heel? Yo, now I need to see.
Now I know why. And when I was live with them on here, and it's on our YouTube page, and I was talking to them about the creativity behind creating this list. I thought because it's like 5 or 6 of them, they all come up with at least about 10 wrestlers. No, they each come up with 50.
Yeah,
they come up with 50. That's and amazing. Then they put it all in the Excel sheet. They do the calculations. Then that's how they pick their 50. And P, sorry to break it to you, Jay Bougie literally just made the cut at number 50.
That's perfectly fine.
He wasn't already there. But the fact that he is on that list, and like you said, Darius Carter, like we are Darius Carter stands over here. I feel like he's literally one of the best heels in the business.
Yes,
1,000%.
And I feel like I would never want to see him as a face. Like I don't think he would. I mean, he probably would do great as a face, but I would never want to see him as a face. Like his heel work is like second to none in the NBC. And having
them piss off kids, old ladies.
Yes,
I've had kids come back with the smoke because they remember that he made them cry last show, and they came back wanting to smoke.
Absolutely.
Like, shout out to Battle Club Pro.
And like you said, when he showcased these indie talents, the Renegade Twins.
Yes.
Amazing wrestlers. You have Trey Miguel, who I just became acquainted with because of Impact Wrestling. And only because Trinity made her way back, so I had to go support my sister. Trinity even Montez Ford being at number 17, Darius Carter at number 15, Carmelo Hayes, which that was a toss up between who was going to be number 1 out of him and Bianca.
Yep.
Which I'm
Yep.
like, either way, you could do no wrong in placing them in either slot. So to see that, it's just something amazing. And they know, like they know they messed up with this one, because they don't even know how they're going to top it for next year.
The beautiful thing about it is that there was a time, not even a decade ago, where we couldn't name 50 black wrestlers.
That's true.
Like, we couldn't have a conversation. We couldn't fill up a list of 50 black wrestlers who were all different. That's the other thing. There's so much talent out there. They're not a monolith. They're like, all black people are not the same. Like, we just mentioned all this talent that are absolutely different in every way they perform, how they talk, how they move, what they represent, like the communities they come from. That list, I think I told Math this. I was like, y'all do it as a list, but I was like, this is a guide. This is a guide to the culture.
Yep.
And yeah, we can argue about who's on the list, but the fact that the list even exists means that there's somebody out there right now going, oh yeah, Bianca's number one on this list. Let me see the rest of this list. And they go, yo, who is this? Who is that? Who's Janae Kai? I think I need to go watch her. And they'll support the independents. They'll support those promotions that support black talent. And you create a bigger culture because of this list. It's the most beautiful thing, man. I love that they did it. I love that I got a chance to be a part of it too.
I love that. I love that for real. Hopefully, P, we're going to talk to them, see if we can have a chance to be a part of it for next year, alleviate some of their stress. But Andreas, thank you so much for joining us, for being a part of this. It was such a pleasure and a treat meeting you in person at WrestleMania, and I'm glad I was able to make that connection and have you as a lifelong friend and family member in this wrestling world. Just let everybody know where they can follow you at. Make sure that they can tap in and tune in with you. Just let everybody know.
Oh, absolutely. And first of all, lifelong friends. Like, we in this. Like, y'all can't get rid of me now, no matter what. Like,
we don't even speak that type of negativity out there.
Nah, not at all. Not at all. So you can find me on all social media platforms at Andreas Hale. You can listen to my podcast with Kel Dansby, the Corner Podcast, on all podcasting platforms. You can catch me on Sirius XM. I do Busted Open. I do all the Fight Nation shows. I'm actually going to be out here International Fight Week for the UFC, hosting a bunch of shows. And then Our Heroes Rock. Follow Our Heroes Rock. If you follow Big E, or you follow me, or you follow Johnny Davenport, you're going to follow Our Heroes Rock. And that is coming at you guys soon. But yeah, I'm here, man. I'm here for anything that you guys need. And like, this culture can only get lifted up if we keep supporting each other. So thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for joining us. And as you all know, you can definitely follow us everywhere. Those Wrestling Girls, T Wrestling Girls on Twitter, Those Wrestling Girls on Instagram and Facebook. You can make sure to follow me, Miss Krista B, on Instagram at MS_KRISTAB_, and the same on Twitter, MS_KRISTAB. Miss Queen PR, where can they find you at?
Everywhere at Queen3_PR. Thank you so much, Andreas, for coming on. I hope this is a regular thing, just to sort of like check in and just like see where we are as far as the growing culture in the industry. And I know I'm gonna see you in Philly.
Period.
Oh yeah.
Hopefully before that, but yeah, we'll definitely be turn it up. And thank you again.
Absolutely. I love y'all, man. Keep doing what y'all do.
We love you too. And on that note, it's Those Wrestling Girls, and we're out of here. Bye. Hey, what's up, y'all? It's your girl, Krista B, one half of Those Wrestling Girls. And I just want to say thank you for tuning in to another dope episode of Those Wrestling Girls. Please make sure that you tune in and you follow us on everywhere we are. We are on Twitch, we are on Patreon, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok. Please make sure you follow and subscribe. And as always, we love and appreciate you. And we can't wait to see you for the next episode. On that note, it's your girl, Krista B, and I'm out of here. Bye.